Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast with me, Ben Talon, illustrator and creativity coach, founder of the Creative Condition, artist and writer. I bring 20 years of creative industry experience and a lifelong love of creativity, a fundamental pillar of human happiness, to you through ongoing personal exploration and the shared experiences of others. You'll get a nourishing mix of creative industry professionals and people far and wide using creativity in ways that can take our learning to the next level so we can maximise our unique blend. The show's been supported from day one by Illustration X, a tremendous illustration agency representing a shining global roster of illustrators and animators over at illustrationx.com. The music for the show is by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on all good streaming services. And for everything else, for my coaching, resources and inspiration, head to thecreativecondition.com. How are you doing, guys? To wrap the year up, I'm going to have a bit of a ramble. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to talk about optimism because it's been a battle this year, finding optimism, holding on to optimism, trying to understand the importance of it in not just our creativity but our lives, because of course creativity and our lives are massively intertwined. We are human beings. We cannot not be creative, able minds permitting, and I think that, well, it's been testing for all of us, so let's get into it. That's what I'm going to do today. It's a short one. It's going to be a bit waffly. I acknowledge that in advance, but I just felt like it would be a good one to sit back in my little office chair here, my garden studio, and talk to you guys to see out the year. With the last episode of 2025, on a personal, slightly little arrogant note, I feel very good about the fact that I've managed to keep this show weekly for 2 straight years now without a break. I mean, I have next week as a break, and I did so last year over Christmas. I think I can forgive myself that. But other than that, to go weekly with a mix of guest episodes and the creativity diary and the 10-minute brew breaks, which I am overdue with an episode of those, it feels pretty good because the feedback is always lovely. When people do give feedback on podcasts, and I don't expect it because I very rarely feedback on the podcasts that I listen to, but I do recommend them. I share them with my friends and people I think will benefit them, particularly things in the realm of coaching that I think are going to give people fresh ideas and new ways to frame things, which is a huge thing I've had to learn this year through suffering a lot of anxiety, something I'll get into in a moment. But I just wanted to address all of, not just, this isn't just a kind of what's Ben Talon been doing this year. This show is never that. It is the things the stories I tell, the things I share are always with the listener in mind, with people and the human condition and their creativity. I tell my own stories only when it's relevant, when I believe that they are commonly experienced, and I do believe that so many of us, in fact, I don't just believe, I know, because through conversation, through observation, through reading the tea leaves, if you will, keeping my ear to the ground, I've always been a real observer of the human condition on a very subtle, small level. And I can see people are struggling. How could they not be? The world is going through huge amounts of transformation, some of it good, some of it bad. But the way the news is reported back to us very much paints it as bad. And you guys will remember the way that I felt uplifted by Stefan Sagmeister's fantastic Now Is Better project, which is incredible. It's been a long-running project going for years now, in which Stefan has been using data about now being perhaps the best time to be alive as a human being in respect to child mortality rates and sickness and democracy and all of these things. When you look back throughout human history, we have it bad today in many regards, but we always did and we always will as a human race. That's the way of the world. Doesn't make it better. It's been terrifying. I've had a really tough year. But Stefan's book was a reminder, much like the work of Steven Pinker, who wrote his foreword, that actually so much by stealth and by great work and determination and ingenuity in humanity has gotten better and will continue to get better. So we have to find a baseline of optimism so that we can contribute to that improvement. I'm a huge believer in creativity's role in that. Big believer in that sentiment in general, and this year has been a personal battle through anxiety to try to get back to a baseline of optimism. So that's why I wanted to end the year on that note and just reflect a little bit. Now, in terms of our industry, the creative industry, whether you're an illustrator, a graphic designer, an art director, a founder, it's change, isn't it? Huge change, huge flux. And for some of us, that means that the roots are being pulled up. If we found ourselves in something of a corner during this change, where we're supplying something that is being quickly replaced by automation, not in demand in terms of the economy, or the budgets have been cut, then it creates panic and maybe even a temporary cessation of that practice. You know, I've seen people have to go and get jobs again. That's not a big flaw. That's not a big disaster. But it might be in that person's story in this moment, and it's okay to feel that pain. You know, if I had to go back to get a retail job or another full-time position of employment, which, touch wood, it's been 18 years since I've done that, that would be massive upheaval for me and my family, because the flexibility that I rely on through my freelance position and as founder of the Creative Condition is golden. I've built systems, routines around that in terms of collecting the children and making sure they've got care during the holidays, that I can feed them, you know, and house them through the income that I make. The flexibility is pivotal to juggling the things that I have to juggle to make the income I have to make. So it's a huge end of something when people have to go and get a job and maybe have to compromise and make changes in their lives. But it's also continuation, and this is what I've been having to learn myself this year and wrestle with themes like impermanence. You know, I've gone through, because let me paint you a picture, okay? Maybe you can resonate with this. I'm 42 this year. I'll be 43 in February next year. I'm at a time of life that is very common for bringing on introspection, reflection, review, self-doubt, doubt in life, and a search for meaning, you know, and I've really felt that intensely this year. So my anxiety was chiefly brought on by financial panic. I'm going to say panic because that's what it is. Not a great deal has changed. I've earned what I need to earn, just about. This year's been a better year than the last 2 years. The last 2 years were really testing. I've had to really deplete those savings and delve into resources I didn't necessarily have, and I've had to bob and weave somewhat. A number of reasons for that, not going to go into today, probably quite boring for a neutral listener. But just to say that it's been a blend of external forces that we've all felt, economic disruption or change, automation, which is very hard to ignore at the moment because we don't know what it's going to look like moving forward. We know we're in the early stages of a revolution that some people put on a par with agriculture. But panic is the word, because when I actually sat down and worked through my accounts, which took me shamefully long and really only happened at the kind of request of my wonderfully supportive wife, Laura, when I looked at them, I'd earned slightly over what I needed to earn, minimums, month on month this year. And that came as a surprise, because the doom that I've built in my mind has caused me around 12 nights this year where I haven't slept a wink, because I got myself so anxious and so ludicrously panicked that I was in fight, flight, freeze. And I've spent far too much of the last 3 years in fight, flight, freeze. And if you're not familiar with that, it's the state we go into when our body and our mind believe that we're under threat of death. We're at immortal danger. That's why anxiety feels so horrendous. It is literally your body preparing you to die. I've learned that from psychologists this year and people who specialise in that field. Some of you might remember the episode I did with the wonderful Wendy Dignan. Wendy does the Overcoming Anxiety podcast, which I recommend for anyone who's suffering and struggling to deal with the symptoms of anxiety, because it's horrendous. And that fight, flight, freeze is paralysing for our creativity. There is no real upside to that. You just kind of have to come back to a physiological grounding through meditation, through deep breathing, through whatever it takes for you. Journaling has been good for me this year to calm yourself. And then you can start to regain some rationality and some logic and actually make good decisions for yourself. Now, I've been listening to a podcast by Dr. Julie called My CBT, because I wanted to learn some techniques of CBT to help to address with this anxiety and my thought patterns. And this was very much what was going on. And when I said panic, I very much meant panic. It wasn't rational. I was about 3 months ahead at a time when a lot of people, as a friend reminded me, are 3 months behind financially. It's not a gloat 3 months feels scarily close when you've got 2 children and a mortgage, and if the next couple of months remain quiet, then it gets even scarier. But that is why I had to start to build some resilience and some ring fence my mind a little more, because I was allowing myself to just think a thought about a potentially quiet month, and that wasn't even forced to be the case. It often hasn't been the case this year. And then just plunge into this state where what started as financial panic then became climate anxiety. That's another major antagonist for me. And existential panic. I'm a deep thinker. I always have been. It's what makes me good at this job. But it also has left me with so much introspection and reflection about the state of being human and being alive that I would have sleepless nights just thinking about what happens when we die. That's where I'd got to. And that thought is far more manageable when I've had good sleep, when I'm not in anxiety or fight, flight, freeze. But I've spent so much of the last 2 to 3 years in fight, flight, freeze that I was in that state and I was having those panics. So when you throw all that together, it becomes this horrific soup where you've forgotten what you were even worrying about in the first place. But now everything in your life is a concern. Even the idea of replying to a text message was triggering a real state of overwhelm where I couldn't face the things that I needed to do in my life. And that was tough, you know? So what ultimately I came to was recognition that I had to meet this stuff head on. So to regain the crucial optimism, which is utterly vital for us to step up and contribute, not just in our lives and be the authors of our lives, but in our field, in the creative industry, professionally, to get the work we need to get, we have to be optimism. We have to be optimistic. We have to be out there shining. And it doesn't always feel easy, but ultimately we have to be looking to get back to a place when we know that our lives can make a difference, and one person can always make a difference in this world. They always can. You don't know what smiling at a person at the bus stop when you could just look at your phone might change. Every action has a reaction and a ripple effect. If you don't know who that person is, what they're going through, maybe that smile changes something in their life. Maybe it gives them a positive reaction that then they carry themselves differently in their day. And how many people are they going to interact with? How many people are they going to influence? Even just walking past someone in a street, if they look downtrodden, maybe that person gets more downtrodden. But if they've been smiled at and they're a bit bouncier, you just don't know. Think about it. It's a magical thought to think that any action we take, profound or tiny, can really ripple through society, through the world. So we have to be carrying ourselves with something of an optimistic outlook, and that's even if we've had to go back to work, even if that job has fallen through, even if we are on the breadline and we're struggling. It's about finding the thought patterns and the resilience to get back to optimism as quickly as we can. And that optimism might just be optimism in a single task format. It might be optimism in the world at large. I've fought hard to manage my news intake this year. Not eliminate my news intake, but to manage my response to the news, but also my intake, to acknowledge that I am highly, highly sensitive. I am a very emotional person. It's what has helped me get to doing coaching now in my work, which has been a big thing this year. But it also means that I absorb the pain and I will carry it, and it will trigger the anxiety. And I don't need that. I can't have that. I can't be a good dad when I feel like that. I can't be the best husband when I feel like that. And I can't be good to myself. I can't be kind to myself. I'll make decisions like not watching the wrestling, not reading the book that I'm enjoying, not going out for a walk or a pint with that friend. And when I do that, I clam up and I close up and the thoughts get worse. And then I affect the people in the world outside and even the people inside my home, my beloved family, in a way that is negative. So really we have to be thinking about, how do we stay optimistic? What is our fight in this life? What is it about this work that brings me wonder and magic? And if it's not doing that, we have to take the steps to change that. Some of the bravery I've seen in my coaching clients this year, people that I've worked with over a year, and then people I've done my one-off pit stop session with, which I want to do more with you guys, so get in touch. It will really elevate your cause. This is not a sell, but in the coaching that I'm doing with people, part of my battle is getting them to feel the wonder and the magic in where they're going and what they're doing. And where they're going might be a bit shit for a while. They might be in a job they don't want to be in. But if I can just reattune them with their purpose and their cause and get them to find some direction and some belonging in their lives, it's amazing how quick optimism comes back. Just the other Friday, I took the Friday off. I took the morning to go Christmas shopping with my wife in town and grab a few bits for the kids. And in the afternoon, I locked myself in the studio. I didn't answer emails. I didn't go on social media. I got to my emotional creativity and I made things just for me. I did some drawings for my trip to Lisbon that I'd been putting off for a while, just to explore the lovely visual culture that I absorbed over there. And I wrote some lyrics and recorded some vocals for a little playful collaboration, spoken word and dubstep with Dirty Freud. Sorry, drum and bass, not dubstep. That's what I think it's closest to. Who knows? It's fun. It's a collaboration. But just when I left that studio, having done something for me and carried that magic with me, it changed everything. I was showing up better in my emails to clients. I was bouncier. I was asking more questions. I would ask for recommendations. And people would help. People would meet that optimism and it would help them. And it's this lovely chain reaction that happens. And I want you guys to think about that over Christmas. I want you to think about what's going to illuminate you next year. We can't change everything overnight. If you're one of those people who's had to leave freelancing and go back to your job, you need to think about not just getting back to freelancing, because maybe that's not the right path for you. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't know who you are who's listening or what's going on in your life. So I couldn't possibly say. But what I do know is that you have to find your fight. You have to find your cause within whatever your circumstances are. That's our war. That is our war. Moving into 2026. Go back to the episode this year with Tyler Schlossberg. Let me have a look. Let me see if I can find the episode number for reference. But Tyler was amazing, and we talked about rebellious optimism as defiance. That is the way to rebel in today's world, to be positive, to not get dragged into political debates and mudslinging on social media. No, it's about carrying yourself in the world in a way that inspires and energizes other people. Tell them what you're excited about. Tell them what you've read or heard that might help them in their lives. Look for the optimism. It's how we get through this massive time of change and transformation. You know, instead of looking at AI and thinking it's just going to come and take our jobs, it bloody well might do. But that might be a utopia on the other side of that if we fight for it. We don't know what it's going to look like. And then it might not take our jobs. It might bring opportunities in our work, or it might forcefully remove the thing that is not serving us, that we were too scared to let go of, and cast us into some new reality that is fucking terrifying, but will lead us to somewhere closer to our values, aligned with our hearts. That's how I felt this year. Initially, I didn't want to speed up the coaching practice as quickly as I've had to, but it's been a blessing in disguise, because really, it's where I was headed anyway. I'm still illustrating. I've had some of the biggest projects that I've had in my career this year, actually. It's not been too bad. It's been intermittent. It's been unreliable. There's been frustrations with all of that. But there's also been some breakthroughs on the illustration front, because I've managed to find optimism in my coaching practice and doing the creative condition, keeping this podcast going and talking to you guys. There's much to be optimistic about, but by using CBT and the likes, I've had to get myself there, and I am getting there. I have felt progress now, 2 weeks of feeling a more baseline optimistic rhythm going on. It feels amazing. The anxiety still comes, but it's like I've employed a doorman, a security doorman in my mind, who is checking the ridiculousness on the door and just helping me to bracket it. Which reminds me, I never finished my point, but Dr. Julie on the My CBT podcast uses a mantra which I think is beautiful, and it's make decisions that are good for you, not based on how you feel. And I love that, because when you feel panicked and anxious and negative, we make self-destructive decisions that further the negative mood and the doom porn. You know, that's something that Simon Dixon said to me from Dixon Baxi. There's a lot of doom porn out there at the moment, and it's not reality. It's what, you know, there's bad shit happening. We have to challenge that collectively. But the doom porn that we see in our industry about, is this the end of illustration? Is this the end of that? Is AI going to this, that, and the other? We don't know that yet, and we have a role in this fight, you know. We will determine whether that's the case. We have to think differently. We have to think more in tune with our personality and our souls than ever before. We have to work harder than ever before to understand who we are, because that is what will enable us to choose the right path forward that is unique, that is ours, that could not be owned by anybody else. By the way, Tyler Schlossberg, the episode about art and joy being the new counterculture is on 263. I implore you to listen to that episode. But go back and listen to any of the shows from this year. There's a lot of talk about optimism, particularly with Tala. Episode 256 with Pogus Caesar was amazing. His photography as a form of activism. The episode with Anthony Burrell was very inspiring, I felt. David Palmer from Love, the founder, was wonderful. Charlotte Bradman, make sure you listen to the episode with Charlotte Bradman, author of The Happy Nomad and a full-time van lifer. She lives full-time in a camper van. She had her house repossessed. She had her Fight Club moment. It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything. I did some coaching this year with a client who was an ex-Hollywood writer who's trying to find his way in this new economy, and he calls it the wasteland playground because the old models are dying. The old model for middle earners in Hollywood is collapsing because of the way that royalties are no longer paid on the back end. Models like Netflix are only paying up front. And it's created this raft of unemployment in the middle earners in Hollywood. And he says it's not just Hollywood. You know, he says, here's a laptop, go figure it out. That's what we're doing in the wasteland playground. Charlotte Bradman, by the way, is episode 279. Head to thecreativecondition.com/pod for the episodes, or jump on Spotify, whichever platform. But him talking to me about that, I thought that was beautiful. And wasteland playground, there's something about the word playground juxtaposed with wasteland that fires me up. It makes me want to find what's new. Okay, all of that's crumbling. Maybe all of that is fucked. I don't know. We'll find out. But by getting into the wasteland playground and having a go and finding my new path, I might find a career path that I'd never dreamed of. To be quite honest with you, I'd never dreamed of coaching, anything that involved therapy or looking out for other people. But it's so well aligned with who I am, and it has been sped up in part because of the likes of Midjourney. When they came out, I freaked out a little bit like the rest of us did, and I started to then really double down on my work as founder of The Creative Condition and this cause of exploring and helping people with their creativity. So that's where you find me. I'm coming out the other side of a really tough year with anxiety, but feeling amazingly fulfilled by having to battle that. And I met it head on. You know, I barely drink now. I don't drink caffeine anymore. I culled that. I meditate. I've been reading and listening to Buddhist philosophy. I've been throwing everything at this stuff, journaling, doing CBT workbooks, and I want you guys to do the same, to take the reins and to use action as your catharsis against these mental health ills that we've all had to suffer somewhat. But in your practice, in your creativity, there is massive value, not just to you, but to every human being, to the world at large. Never forget that, guys. Don't ever doubt it. Come and have a chat with me if you're doubting it. We can do some coaching together if you want. But if not, I'm always here to help you anyway. It's why I do this podcast for free. I have the reading list on the website. But if you do want to work directly with me, I would love to do some coaching. We get into all this stuff: money, mindset, mood, mental health, purpose, belonging, childhood. It's all there. The coaching that I do is very, very deep. There's a lot of parallels with therapy, even though I would never dare to call myself a therapist without the right qualifications. But there is a real therapeutic aspect to me as a human, and therefore the way that I coach. So I'm excited about that next year. I'm excited about my illustration practice because that's evolving accordingly, moving with the times. Have a look at what Claudine O'Sullivan is up to. She's doing a lot of great stuff around career transition, particularly through her own personal circumstances with mental health challenges and motherhood, but also just in shifting with what is this current moment. How do we find the optimism in that? So thank you to every one of you for taking the time to listen to this show and every show this year. It's been a ride as ever. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to my founding sponsor, Illustration X, who've supported me from not just getting this thing off the ground, but the whole 10 years since. So it means the world. Thank you to everyone who's listened, shared, rated, reviewed, subscribed. Anything you can do along those lines over Christmas would mean the world. Of course, you can get the Creative Condition book. You can get champagne and wax crayons and all my other resources on the website, including the Anatomy of Creativity map. And you can work directly with me as a creative coach. I'm looking to really pick that up in the new year. Got a couple of slots left in January, but it's building up quick. It's going to be busy and sold out soon. So if you want to work with me, give me a shout. I'm knocking off work today, Friday 19th of December, but I will keep an eye on my email. And if you've got a coaching query, I will get back to you because I would love to help more of you in January and we can work something out. It's really going to help you. Cheers, guys. Thank you again. Please do check out the Ukrainian Institute. Hard, unbelievably hard times over there. And that speaks to the bravery and the resilience of the creative community. You can see at ui.org.ua for the Ukrainian Institute, who are supporting those brave creatives, and you can too. Thanks, guys. Have an awesome Christmas and New Year. Love you all lots. I'll speak to you in Jan.